Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Game of Gymnastics podcast. This week I'm joined by Lisa Schneider, the co-producer of the Gate Crasher project, winner of STORROR Female of the Year, and Parkour Athlete. We'll talk about her thoughts on competitive parkour, its inclusion under FIG, and how she hopes to change the perception of the sport. I hope you enjoy. Hi Lisa, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So how did you first get into gymnastics as a whole, and then how did you transition from that into parkour?
I think my parents took me to the parents' kids gymnastics classes when I was 2 or 3, I think. And then when I was 5 or 6, I was doing all right in gymnastics. And then I think my mum told me this recently, and my coach was really smart and took me to a competition that was like competitive gymnastics, and not just so in Austria we've got the you do sort of hobby gymnastics, and then you've got the semi-professional gymnastics, I guess, or competitive gymnastics. And she took me to that competition. I just saw all the girls being amazing. I was like, I want to do this, and I want to get this good. And then when I was 7, I went to this training facility, I guess, where I trained until I was 12. And then I quit. I did track and field for 2 years, and then I did trampolining for 3 years. And then I got injured doing trampolining. I broke my jaw. 2 weeks after that happened, we had a workshop with a guy called Greg Rowe. I don't know if you know him. He's from Canada. He used to do trampolining competitively, and now does a lot of freestyle trampolining stuff. And he came to the parkour jam. So the workshop was at a parkour jam, and then had a training camp for a day. But I ended up at a parkour jam, and I couldn't do trampolining, so I just met loads of the parkour people and hung out with them, and then I got into parkour through that. Yeah.
Nice. So what's the transition been like? So how have you used your gymnastics and trampolining sort of background in your parkour?
So at the start, when I got into parkour, it was the people I trained with, it was really flip based. And I didn't learn not a lot of the basics of parkour, just because, they just sort of built up flips, I guess. And I really enjoyed that because I wanted to do flips, but it was it was coaching as well. I was sort of used to from gymnastics. And I think that was really good for me because that's what I really, really struggled with at some point. Just going out by myself and figuring out what to do by myself without having anyone tell me what to do. So I think the first year or 2, I was mainly getting coached and mainly training in parks and gyms. And then, no, that's not true. The first year. And then I went traveling. And then I met people that were just training on the streets. And that sort of changed it a lot for me because I sort of realized that that's you do just go out and you try and come up with your own stuff. And that was the tricky period for me, I think. But then at the same time, I also really enjoyed the freedom of it and just being able to do whatever I wanted and not necessarily what I was told.
Nice.
That was definitely
Well,
tricky.
for someone that is completely uneducated in parkour and gymnastics, any of that sort of thing, how would you describe it?
How would I describe parkour? It's really tricky because it used to be the quickest way from A to B, but that's when it started, And then I think it's just moving creatively in random environments, Parkour can be so much now. It's so broad. It's just, I guess the main thing is you're probably out on the streets in not necessarily a controlled environment, but then you can also do it in gyms. It's really tricky. It's really tricky to define it, and I don't think there's a proper definition. We've been trying to figure it out. I don't really know. How would you describe it?
Parkour?
Yeah.
I don't think I know it well enough to define it.
Yeah, well, I know it quite well, and I don't know how to define it. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's hard to confine it to one specific thing. Well, I'll try a different sort of approach then. How would you describe your style of parkour, and what does that mean?
So I think now I do... my style of parkour. It's changed as well over the years. I think when I started, it was really flip based, and then it got really creative and sort of flowy. And now it's become more, basically what I want to do is I want to move as naturally as I can and then use spots in specific ways. So we've got spots where you just sort of go to and train, and you can do your jumps and you can use it in loads of different ways. If there's just, let's say 3 walls, you can do so many things in those 3 walls. And the last year or 2, I've been really interested in finding spots where you can do 1 or 2 specific things. And it's not a spot that you would train at for hours. It's a spot where you would sort of go to and do 1 or 2 things. I'll find your thing that you want to do through the spot. I don't know if that's a very good way of describing what I do, but yeah, I think that's it. So finding spots that are movement specific, I guess. And I've got way more into like traditional parkour, I guess. So I don't do a lot of flips. I've moved quite far away from the gymnastics sort of background that I got. Also because I'm fucking terrified of landing on concrete with flips. Like, it's so scary.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, going over your head on them. Yeah, especially when you're like in unstable, uncontrolled environments. Yeah, not sure what kind of reaction I'll get out of this, but what are your thoughts on competitive parkour versus the other option?
Well, I think we need it. I think competitive parkour is needed because it gets people involved. Like, it gets outside people involved in the sport, and it gets sponsors interested, and people get to make money from it. Just personally, I don't really care about them. I don't find them that interesting, and I don't want to compete because I compete in gymnastics, track and field, and trampolining, and I just don't like the competitive environment. And I think it takes away from the creative, depending on how the competition is run. But I think it quite often takes away from the creative side of parkour. But yeah, at the same time, I do think competition is necessary to grow the sport in a way. And I think the way it's evolving right now, it's two different sort of way. I mean, some people do both, but different routes you can take within parkour. Like, you can either focus on competition and get good at that because it's a very different type of training that you do from if you just want to go out and film a video part of it. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. So if you're not training for competition, what are you training for?
I'm really interested in video, like in filming, and also for, it sounds so cheesy, but for myself, because it's like parkour is so mental. And I've always said that I want to get to a point where my physical is like sort of similar to my mental, because I'm physically stronger than I am mentally. And it's really interesting for me is to sort of push that side and see how close I can get to that being the same. I think if it gets too close, it's a bit scary, but yeah, and to sort of just, it makes me feel good. And it just, I don't know, you probably know it from gymnastics, like it feels so good if you do something that you didn't think you were capable of.
When you say like the mental is like you're physically stronger than you are mentally, do you mean like you're physically capable to do a lot of stuff that mentally you wouldn't go for?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, quite often when I do something that is mentally hard for me, I then do it and it's easy. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think if I was mentally stronger, I could do a lot more because I'm more capable than I think. But it's also scary to sort of push that aside because, you can push it too far.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, better than a lot of people because gymnastics
Yeah.
is a lot of pushing yourself mentally more than anything because physically you'll have the ability to do as many skills as you want, like mentally being able to not only just be able to go for them, but also doing it with the right technique, like because having the physical capability of doing something and then actually doing it, two very different things.
Completely different things. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you say that you work towards, like, you do a lot of like videos and things like that. What does that look like?
It's different. So 2 years ago, I filmed I organized/filmed this, like, a pretty big video project. It was like a women's video. So it was like 3 weeks of filming with 11 girls. We just traveled through 3 cities. And then, so it's sort of all the before and after that. Well, I didn't edit it, but just like, all the admin stuff of that. And then last year I filmed a video with just one friend. And that's sort of just, you go out, you scout for sports, figure out, like, you try and think of what you want the video to look like what kind of vibe you want it to be, what you want to show with it, what you want to do with it or whatever. And then you just like go out specifically for like to get those clips and for that. So it looks really different from just going out training casually on a day. Then last year I sort of I got a camera and I started filming a lot more myself because I don't want to rely that much on other people all the time with filming. So I've started just editing little videos as well, and I want to get more into that. But yeah, it's a lot of like figuring out concepts, figuring out the right people who you want to film with, who you want to edit, and who you want to get involved and stuff. And then, it's a lot more intense, I think, than normal training.
What are your sort of goals with those sorts of videos? Like, I know it'll be different for each one generically.
Push the sport, I think. So with the first one, with that big women's video, that it was just, get women together because it's a very male dominated sport, right? So it's rare that you've got a girl on the same level to train with. And having 10 of those girls together was crazy. So just getting all of us together and spending that time together. And then also, pushing the women's side and pushing the sport. And then with that video last year that I did, that was, it it was to push ourselves personally, and then also the same thing again, like to push the women's side of things. But also sometimes it's just fun. Like I like framing things, I like filming things. And I think I want to try and make parkour more approachable to people that don't necessarily do parkour, because I think we have a lot of video projects within parkour that is just parkour. And if you only see that, I think a lot of people who don't do it, they just think we're absolute idiots and we risk our lives for nothing and just do stupid stuff. So I want to make videos that sort of show why we do it, because it gives you so much joy to do something well, and like all the emotions that come with it and the friendships and the support and whatever. I think that's what makes it really special. And with the video projects I do, I sort of want to show that.
So when you do those and have those like sort of clips go viral, what's that feeling like?
I don't know. I think the first times that happened, it was a bit crazy and I got kept checking my Instagram and stuff. But then most of the time, I think when parkour clips go viral, it's not necessarily positive. So I try to just ignore it. And I think from sort of the start, because Instagram is such a tool, I guess, for parkour to sort of get noticed and get the reach that's necessary to eventually get jobs or whatever. But I never really liked social media, so I've always tried to sort of like stay quite distant from it. So I don't feel that much from it. It's more when I upload something that I'm really proud of, then when I get feedback on that from people I care about and friends or whatever, that brings me joy. But
Cool.
it's not necessarily the like random viral clip.
Yeah. What do you mean by when you said when parkour clips go viral, it's not necessarily positive?
Because it's always the clips, like not always, but most of the time the clips that go viral are the ones where you do something at height and where people just think it's stupid, and then people tell you that, well, they hope it goes wrong next time. I hope you die. I hope, like, all that sort of stuff. So it's just, you don't really want to keep up with that because it's just stupid.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, but it's just because that's what I was trying to say before with the video projects. That's what people see. Like they see you like slide down a pole for a 2-story building or something, and all they think is it's stupid because you could die. And yeah, I think that needs to. And it doesn't need to, but it would be nice if that changes. If people's perception of parkour changed a little bit.
Yeah. So what do you think the perception should be?
That's a really good question. I think it's a sport like any other, not like any other, but it sort of is a sport like any other, where people just try and push themselves and we do it for ourselves. I think that's something that should change, that people understand that we do it mainly for ourselves. Because one reaction we get a lot is, oh, you risk your life for Instagram or for a viral clip or something. And that's just so not true. Like, I think I would love for people to understand that we do it because we want to push ourselves and we enjoy the, like, annoyingly is like a little bit of a high that you get after you do something well or after you've overcome a fear. So I think that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people won't be able to comprehend what you're doing. I suppose for me, it's quite easy to understand where you're coming from. The fact that getting over a fear and doing a skill that you've been mulling over for a while, like, it's a great feeling to sort of get over that. But a lot of people won't sort of have that in their lives, like if they're just like regular people. So how do you try and get that feeling across? How do you try and shift that perception?
Yeah, I think through videos, but I don't know. And I guess through talking to people, but I don't know. It also depends on if people are sort of open to change their perception, because I feel like it's similar with, if you look at like climbing, it's the same thing. Like, Alex Honnold climbing that tower in Taipei. The people think it's absolutely stupid because he risks his life for nothing. And then the other half of people think it's an insane achievement. So I think you'll always have both sides, but I think the more exposure parkour gets in media, the more people will understand.
So yeah, you mentioned that obviously people that think it's just thrill seeking, etc., etc. You say you don't just have parkour in your videos. What else do you have?
So I like the build up to something, like the person when they're in their head trying to commit to something, and then the reaction afterwards, not just their reaction, but the reaction of everyone around, and how, like, when you see your mate do something scary, you're so involved in that, like you want them to do well, and because you understand the joy that they get out of it, you sort of feel a little bit of that joy and just the whole support. Because I think it's really special because parkour is mostly non-competitive. You just, like, you share that joy because it doesn't matter if someone does it and you can't do it, like there's nothing, you don't lose anything from it. So that support that we have, I've not felt it in any other competitive sport that I've done. And I want to bring that across.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the competitive side, not too much on it, but I know that there's been controversy around the whole competitive side of it, especially with its inclusion under FIG. What are your thoughts?
It's tricky. Yeah, as I said, I think competition is necessary. I think grassroots competitions are better because, like, better than FIG competitions, just because it's grassroots, you know. And I think FIG could be a really good thing if they did it right. But I'm not that involved with it. I don't know the most, like, I know a little bit, but I don't know that much about it. So just want to say that. From what I've heard is, I think FIG is trying to regulate it in a way gymnastics is regulated, and to judge it in a way gymnastics is judged, and that doesn't work. That it simply doesn't. Like, parkour is so different from gymnastics, you know, like even points of deduction or something. It's because gymnastics is so regulated and there's one right way, but most of the time there's one right way of doing something. In parkour, there just isn't. Also, like, it's so complicated to, like, for example, if you can compare like a 4-meter jump to a rail or a 3-meter jump to a rail to a double backflip, like, how are you going to compare that? It doesn't really work. Like, it's going to be for one judge who, for example, like really good at jumping onto rails, that's so much easier than a double backflip. And then the other judge is really good at double backflip, so that's easy. You know, like, it's just things that you can't really regulate. And one thing they've also started doing is banning moves, and that I think is just silly. Like, they've banned dive rolls because they're banned in gymnastics, and I think doing that in a sport that's so free is so silly. And they've banned like running on rails because someone fell, and that's just things that I think are quite silly, and the way it's judged is quite silly. I don't know if they're changing it because there's been a lot of controversy about it, and a lot of people have said something about it, so I think it's got to them. But yeah, the way it's run is not the best, and a lot of people who were involved with trying to make it right at the start have quit because they sort of said there's not really any way of talking to them. So I think if they did it right, it would be really good because they have the money behind them. And also what they've always done, which is amazing, and this, you can't really say that for any other parkour competition, is they pay men and women equally, and they pay them well. And we don't have that with grassroots. Like, no prize money in a grassroots competition compares to the prize money in a FIG competition. So for that side of things, it's definitely good, and people can get sponsors because they've got television exposure and all of that stuff. So I think there's good things about it. I think they're just rushing it and not listening to the parkour community, annoyingly.
So, interesting thing, actually. I have spoken to someone from FIG about this.
Oh, yeah.
Breaking the fourth wall a bit. Literally today. So I mentioned to you that I had another podcast recording today. It was with someone from FIG, Jakob, who's the parkour sport manager. So very high up. Obviously, I don't have like huge opinions on it. Then again, this is from someone from FIG, so they're obviously going to have their bias and their
so do I.
He said they're trying to listen to the people within parkour, and they're trying to make changes based on that. I spoke briefly about the code of points. They said they're basically trying to do a similar sort of thing that they do in gymnastics, but not identical. I didn't know about the dive roll thing. That sounds weird. And also, like, running and banning moves is weird.
Yeah.
But basically saying, like, putting more emphasis on skills that are rarely seen, less emphasis on skills that are common, things like that. Again, it's things to think about because parkour is about expression and things like that. So viewing something's higher than others it's up for debate, as it has been. But yeah, no, I can see both sides of it.
No, for sure, yeah. And I think if they are actually trying to listen and work with us, they could do a good thing. It's just up until, I think that there was like a really terrible competition 1 or 2 years ago. And up until then, I don't think they really have. And I've seen the code of points then, maybe 2 years ago, and it's very similar to floor routine. You know, like that sort of like the time, they've got like a time limit for it, and the way it's like connected or like the connecting moves and all of that stuff. It does just seem like a floor routine sort of code of points, but it's nice to hear that they're trying to listen.
Yeah, you briefly explained like the freestyle speed components of it, and the fact that freestyle's the three biggest elements, 3 biggest tricks, whatever you called it. I can't remember. I'm a gymnast. I'm always going to resort to elements or skills.
I know, so good.
And he didn't mention a time limit. Given the fact that it's 3 tricks, doesn't seem like it would really need one. But he then basically went on to say it's just that difficulty and then the execution based on the flow and all that sort of thing. I haven't had time to look at the code of points. I didn't realize you had one until literally that interview, which was like a few hours ago. So I don't know how that execution would be judged. My question is, how do you judge that? How do you judge how one person's flow and creativity and all that sort of thing and unique style compares to someone else's in numbers?
Yeah. So one thing from what I meant with time limit, I said that wrong, is it was basically the longer your run is, up to I think a minute or minute 10 or a minute 20, the more points you get. So if your run is like less than 30 seconds long, then you get points deducted. That's what I meant with time limit, not like you have an hour, a minute and a half and then.
Right.
Yeah, I said that
wrong. I
wrong.
mentioned something about that.
Yeah, parkour judging is so hard. It's really, really hard, and I've judged before, and it's incredibly tricky. And I think the competition that I've enjoyed judging most, or the two competitions that I've enjoyed most, was where you're completely subjective and you judge it like a breaking battle or like a hip hop battle, where you just go like this or that person, you know? Because that's like a really personal opinion, and I know that that's maybe also like for competitions like that, it's definitely not the way forward. But because you can't make it objective, I feel like you should lean into the subjectiveness of it, you know? And the organizers of the competition should get judges that they trust and whose opinion they value. And then they just make the decisions based on who they prefer, because it's so incredibly hard to put points on it. And I've judged one competition and it was sort of, I think I was creativity judge, which I think is one of the easier ones. I think difficulty is probably the hardest one to judge, but creativity is like, again, also very subjective, because like something might be creative to me because I would never come up with it, but then something might not be creative to me because I do it all the time, even though for someone else it might be creative, you know? But yeah, it was just out of 10, you give a score for creativity. But with that competition as well, it was 4 of us, I think. So we had creativity, execution, difficulty, and then overall impression. Oh no, we didn't have overall, it was just 3 of us. But basically we had to watch every video back, because in the end we were just there, like, nah, the results don't match, because you always judge the first person differently. Like the first person's always at a disadvantage. And then you sort of, like, the more people you watch, the more you can sort of make a proper judgment on it. But the first person is just like, you just wing it. So I think because of that as well, it's really tricky. I honestly, I don't know what the solution is. I really don't. I like seeing like battle format competitions, because I think it gets spectators involved a lot more and they understand a lot more what's going on, because it's just either this or that person and they're out. And you can be fully subjective. But I know
it seems like it would be more clear cut.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But then I also understand that that doesn't necessarily work for an FIG competition.
Yeah, especially when, like, if there's so many people as well, that would be difficult.
Yeah, you'd have to do like a pre-selection and then just kick people out. I think that would be my solution.
Yeah, which is...
I don't know if that's a good solution.
Yeah. Well, based on the rules as they are now, or as you know them now, do you think it's a good fit as an Olympic discipline?
I don't know. Yeah,
because that is the ultimate goal.
I genuinely have no clue. Sorry?
That is the ultimate goal for them.
Yeah. I really don't know. I think obviously they're trying to get a lot more freestyle sports into the Olympics. And if more freestyle sports do get selected to be in there, then parkour does have a place, I guess. But I mean, on the physical side of things, yes, for sure, because it's a really hard sport and people should be rewarded. And I think it would give parkour some sort of legitimacy. But yeah, in the end, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. It sounded like to me, based on the conversation I had earlier, that they're trying to walk a very fine line between formalizing the sport and actually making it like sort of competition ready sort of thing, in terms of getting the national governing bodies on board and things like that. But then also keeping the sort of spirit of parkour and keeping the creativity and that side of things, while also giving it a code of points and having it be scored and having a fair ranking system. I don't know if that's been achieved as of right now, based on what would need to happen to get them into the Olympics. Would either be they substitute a different gymnastics discipline for parkour, or Brisbane actively selects parkour to be one of their chosen sort of disciplines, chosen sports, because sometimes the individual cities or countries that are hosting can pick specific sports that they want to be in there above others. And parkour could be an exception, but based on what the IOC has told FIG, it's unlike, well, It's unlikely unless they substitute a different sport, a different discipline from gymnastics, which I don't think would be right based on the conversation I had and what I've thought about since. I think other gymnastic disciplines under the umbrella of gymnastics are more organized and more competition ready, I think.
Yeah, and they fit
also
the
there'll be
bill
a
a
lot
lot
less
more.
debate about it.
Yeah.
There'll also be a lot less debate because things like tumbling and double mini trampoline, they are so cool to watch and they wouldn't take too many medals up and they're real spectacles. They're all underneath trampoline gymnastics. So I think if individual trampoline was to go, I think one of them should take it. But that's just my opinion. Just where I sit right now, because again, this could change in a heartbeat. I'm only just really learning about this sort of thing. And I could get roasted for this, but I don't really care.
I also think that trampolining or like double mini and tumbling fit gymnastics a lot more than parkour. That is so random that they would choose parkour, which is so much further away from gymnastics than like if they would choose that over double mini. Like it makes no sense to me. It might make sense in the sense that it would attract more people to it. But then at the same time, I feel like why not support what's already there? Like I don't know. I just think I don't know what is it. So in gymnastics, if you win a World Cup, how much money do you win? Do you know?
That question's better posed to someone else. But yeah, I don't think the prize money is like incredible.
Yeah, but that's like in parkour, you win $7,000 if you win a World Cup, and that's a lot of money. And I'm sort of thinking like from trampolining, I know that. Well, I was offered to when FIG thing started, I was offered to go to Japan to compete in the World Cup, and it was all expenses paid for, flights paid for, food paid for, everything. And then on top of that, if you win, like it's $7,000 first place, $5,000 second, and $3,000 the third place. And my thought, and then at the same time, I saw the like Austrian Olympic team trying to raise money to go to the World Cup or something like that in trampolining, and I was sort of like, that doesn't make sense. You know, like surely support the sports that like it's good for parkour, don't get me wrong, but at the same time support the people that are already on your team, you know, instead of going to a sport where the people aren't even that keen on it being in the Olympics or a gymnastics discipline or whatever. Surely put that money towards better use and support the people that are struggling to make a living from gymnastics. I don't know. That was sort of my thought.
I think that's it. I don't know if it's the same amounts, obviously, as it was when you were selected to go, but that sounds like, based on what I've been told by people like Joe Fraser, like it's a lot more than what the MAG World Cups will pay out, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read about it like back then and it was a lot less. Also, I've got to say, they're not paying expenses anymore. That was just at the start. Like now you actually have to pay for your own flights and stuff, unless I think you're in the top 3 or something. But I could be wrong about this. But still,
also unless it's like NGVs as well.
Yeah. So like basically the national federations now support you or they don't support you or whatever. But yeah, that was sort of like, that made me a bit angry as well, because if there is money, give it to the people that are sort of already on your team, you know. It's tricky. It is tricky.
Pretty much.
On the other hand, it gives parkour athletes the opportunity to actually make some proper money from it, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, at the start, I think they were just trying to give it some legitimacy and make sure it was a success. But yeah, it's interesting how they've gone about it. Do you think there's a bit of a divide between the competitive and amateur sides of parkour?
I think there used to be more of a divide. I think now we just coexist. I don't know. I mean, there's still people in the community, I think, that have something against people. Well, I think not necessarily the competitive side, more the FIG competitive side. I think there's still people that think you shouldn't compete in FIG and blah, blah, blah. But I think that's a really small percentage now. Because now it's all just like you do whatever you want. You know, and I think the non-competitive side is not necessarily that interested in watching FIG comps, and probably vice versa. I don't know. But I think it's similar to a lot of other freestyle sports. Like there will just be a competition scene and then there'll be more of like a street scene, I guess. And I think that's completely fine.
What kind of support or recognition would you like to see for parkour athletes, but especially female parkour athletes going forwards?
It'd be really cool if brands realised that supporting parkour athletes would be beneficial for them, because there's no money in parkour. I think that's like not our biggest issue, but a really big issue. There's no parkour industry. Like, do you know, with like skating or snowboarding, any of these sports, you have board brands that have a team and they support you or whatever. But with parkour, we just don't have that. So I think some sort of monetary support would be amazing, because there's so many athletes out there who have incredible ideas and are so skilled, but they're just not able to do what they want to do because they have to make a living. So more of the parkour industry, more support from outside brands would be amazing. Female specific, I think just female representation, but it's getting so much better. Yeah, I don't know, I think the biggest issue is that people are really struggling to make a living from the sport, so they can't put their all into it. But if they were able to do that, we'd see so many more incredible projects and skills athletes, whatever. Right? It's just if that's not something you have to worry about, you can fully focus on parkour, and that'd be really cool.
Yep, it's the eternal struggle of sports people in general. I think it's a very common thing for athletes to just not be able to train full time because they don't have the funding.
Yeah,
I think
it's a
some
shame.
do. Yeah, obviously there's people like footballers that get like stupid funding and things like that,
Yeah,
but they're the
divide it.
exceptions.
Yeah, there's so much money for people like that. Just divide it. Give it they don't need that much money. Just give us some of it. Give them a couple million less. They can do with 5 instead of 10, and then just spread the rest among us. But yeah.
Yeah, realistically, the thing is our performance or what you can offer is our currency. Like whether it be in videos for you or for either this podcast or my competitions or whatever for me, like you got to figure out what you can offer and then you can try and monetize yourself that way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's tough.
It's just tricky. But also saying that is growing more. I think for the next generation in parkour, there'll be more opportunities for sure. One part of that is competition.
Yeah, it's another opportunity. It's not necessarily something you have to do if you go into parkour, but it's there.
Yeah, and it's cool to see some people that do competitions, they do get recognized by they go to sports galas and then they win some national prizes and stuff like that for sports person of the year or whatever. And that's really cool to see. That recognition is amazing. And I think that comes a lot from competitions because it's something that you can just objectively say someone did well, Whereas with the video project you can't really say that.
Nice. So what's next for you?
Really good question. I don't know. I want to do more video projects, I think, with parkour, but also I've been really getting into snowboarding, so I want to try and combine the two, I guess, in some way. But with videos, it's really because we're doing this right now. I'm so out of parkour at the moment. I started this season, a snowboard season in December, and December until April, I'm so in my snowboard little bubble. I don't think that much about what's gonna happen with parkour, but I've got a project I want to work on, or I'm working on, but I'm really bad at finding the time for it. But yeah, basically I want to make more video projects and I want to figure out ways that people can make money off video projects and just try and do parkour for as long as I can, I guess.
So finding ways for other people to make money off of their projects.
For example, I made this project 2 years ago and we crowdfunded it and then everyone that was on the project got paid. So I want to figure out how to do that without crowdfunding it, but actually getting people involved and give it some sort of legitimacy. That'd be really
do you think sort of getting companies involved would be a good way of doing that? So sort of sponsorship.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I honestly don't know. That's the main issue. But I think I think it would be beneficial for companies to get involved. I think we can provide something, but that's the main thing I'm trying to figure out.
Cool. Awesome. All right. One more question. Now that you've experienced the podcast, who should I get on next?
That's really tricky. I'd say someone completely random, some sort of, what I would be really interested in, right, is some artist that doesn't necessarily do sport, but see how that world maybe is similar to ours, or if you can find any parallels, or if there's none. But that might be just completely out of, not what you're interested in or whatever, but I always find it quite fascinating to see.
Be interesting. I've thought about getting other different types of sports people on, so from different sports, see the differences in sort of training and things like that, how they sort of compare, but I've had no luck getting people on.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's hard getting people to respond.
Yeah. If you want someone from within parkour, I guess, who knows a lot about the whole FIG situation, you could talk to Callum Powell. Don't know if you know of him. He's part of STORROR. He's writing a book, and one chapter is about, as far as I know, the whole FIG situation. And he's been on a few podcasts, so he might be interested. Especially if you tell him that you've talked to someone from FIG before.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, that guy did say he'd be happy to come on again with someone who was actively against the FIG situation. So I could have just them hashing it out.
Yeah, I think he's done that before.
That could be interesting.
Yeah. I think he's done. So STORROR has a podcast, and I think he's had someone on from FIG before. Might be the same guy. I don't know. But that'd be a shout for sure.
I'll see what I can do with that. Well,
Amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.
Of course. Thank you very much for coming on. I really enjoyed it. I hope that the audience has too. I hope you've learned something. Thank you very much for listening to the Game of Gymnastics podcast. I hope you'll join me in listening to the next one. Peace.